Coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere in the frigid prairies of Oklahoma, I'm your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. This is Acceleration Radio with my very special guest, Bill Salas. Is there a war coming in the Middle East? Are we headed toward a one-world government, a one-world religious system? Will America be attacked again? Do ancient prophetic texts warn of a time we are living in? Are we in the last days, the time of Jacob's trouble, the end of the world as we know it? And what are the increase of UFO sightings? While we may disagree as to what is causing the phenomenon, we can agree that it is real, burgeoning, and not going away. Is this the coming great deception that ancient prophecy warns us about? Does time seem to be accelerating? Join me, your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli, as we explore these and other riveting and stimulating topics. This is Acceleration Radio. Understand why, endless searching cry to understand why. Well, folks, it's obvious that Bill is here in studio with us, and this is incredibly apropos. Bill, welcome to Acceleration Radio again. Always good to see you.
Absolutely.
We'll be speaking at the Prophecy Watchers Conference.
We will, in June.
In June, that's going to be great. I will be at Alien Snowfest. I might as well get all this stuff out of the way. It's up in Big Bear. I'll be at Alien Snowfest on the 24th of this month. So check that out. Go to my blog, lamarzulli.wordpress.com, and I'll be up there. George Norrie, Nick Pope, a whole bunch of people. All talking about the UFO phenomenon, which is not going away, Bill.
It's not.
But look, stuff is going on here. The last 4 or 5 days has just been incredible, and I just want to kind of set the stage here. I actually did a PPS report on it this week, but we see, of course, the typical response from the Arab, they're not Arab, but from the Iranian street, as it were. By the way, the Iranians are not Arabs, just so you know. They are not Arabs. As Chuck Missler used to say in Ezekiel 38, there's not an Arab in the bunch. Iran is listed in Ezekiel 38. I'm getting way ahead of myself. But what we see here is this incredibly precise strike on this butcher, Soleimani. And he was a butcher. I mean, the fact that CNN and some of these pundits in the liberal media, it just blows me away. They're trying to defend him as a martyr, a religious scholar, or whatever label it. This guy was a butcher. I mean, he's responsible for torturing hundreds, if not thousands, of people. Mm-hmm. He invented this little roadside bomb deal that would pierce any armored vehicle. So we've got our blood and treasure walking around here without arms and legs. Thank you, Mr. Soleimani. And this is what amazes me. And this is my first question. So, in the days of Jimmy Carter, they took 52 hostages, and Jimmy was anemic, with all due respect, Mr. President. I honor your service, but he was an anemic, weak president who, believed, I guess, that everything would all wash out in the wash or whatever. So we've got 52 hostages, which linger in Iranian jails, and who knows what happened there. We won't go into that. And then Carter loses the election, and, of course, they're released. So Iran's got this long history since the mullahs have taken control of the country. Mm-hmm. And we could get down in that rabbit hole for a half an hour, but maybe we will. So the mullahs are in control, and you fast forward all throughout the years, atrocity after atrocity after atrocity. Then you look at Benghazi, nothing happens. And so the Iranians decide, for whatever reason, they wake up on a Monday morning and go, we're going to take the American embassy quickly. And they attack our embassy. So let me see. Here's a multiple choice question. A, we do nothing. B, like Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, his real name, but Barack Hussein Obama, we send $140 billion. C, we retaliate, bring our troops in and blow Soleimani. Which is the correct answer to that question?
Right. Well, I'm a C guy. I think C was the appropriate response. And I think as we see the dust settle on this matter, we're going to have further clarity and confirmation on that. The situation with Obama, it's interesting to me. We have these two different dynamics from his term, where he was negotiating with Zarif, their lead negotiator in Iran, with John Kerry. Zarif was actually, stories would be in these closed-door sessions, a bully of sorts with Kerry, but they would appease and try to work with him. And they put
unbelievable.
The JCPOA together, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, nuclear deal.
Right, I read that this morning. Right.
And then, so that was the deal. Now, immediately on May, of a campaign promise, Trump comes in on May 8th of his first year and backs out of the nuclear deal. May 15th, on the 70-year anniversary of Israel, he moves the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Now we're starting to see that the consequences of those effects are manifesting positively from my perspective.
I agree.
To the point now where Iran has now been pinched as he's backed out of that deal. The sanctions have really hurt them, and they are getting relatively desperate because they've got themselves invested in their proxies throughout the Middle East, like the tentacles.
Hezbollah, the people in Yemen, the Houthis, the whole deal.
They're there, and they've got to fund all that. And so it's coming to a critical point where they've been acting out, and Soleimani was in charge of those Iraqi militias that are they're Shiites over there. They've got a pretty good hold on Iraq. They've got the Beirut connection with Lebanon. They've got the Damascus connection with Assad.
Let me stop you right there. What is Soleimani doing with the money in Iraq anyway? I mean, they're not going to a barbecue and they're, what is he doing there with the money? They're strategizing. That's right. What they're doing.
Oh yeah. He was making plans, and those plans were probably going to get bigger and bigger and more serious. So Trump takes this guy out. Now Bush could have done it. George W.
Right. Obama could have done it,
but they calculated the political ramifications and decided that would be too risky to do. Where Trump is a little less calculated on those types of things, and he just does what he wants to do. And frankly, I admire him for that.
I do too.
But he does his counseling. He checks out the legal ramifications. He talks to his envoys and his consultants. So he just doesn't go crazy on it. But he's calculated these things. But the bottom line is, if you got a bully, you just take care of the bully, and that's what he said. And you start killing American interests, killing American people. There's a line drawn in the sand. Now, this is a red line that Trump has drawn in the sand. Now, Obama drew a red line in the sand.
And promptly erased it and drew a nice pink one.
Well, it was this: if Syria uses chemical weapons, that's a red line for Obama.
Exactly.
Well, they used chemical weapons.
Allegedly,
the red line became became a gray line.
Right. Very gray.
And his solution to that was Vladimir Putin was going to come to the rescue and go and help and initiate the dismantling of the chemical weapons in Syria. But instead, he goes in to the Syrian revolution and bombards Assad's enemies into submission and keeps Assad into power, and the chemical weapons are still there.
It's unbelievable.
So now we have Zarif, who was giving Kerry and Obama a hard time. Donald Trump is not even allowing him to go speak at the United Nations. So we are talking, folks, be clear on this. America, during Obama, was all about, we're not an exceptional nation. He's not about American exceptionalism. He did what he did. He allowed the Middle East to get where it is now.
It's a mess.
And Trump, the new sheriff in town, had to come in and say, no, we're going to stop these things. We have an entirely different approach to this sort of thing right now.
I want to get into something here because I have a guy that shoots me intel, and he's been saying from the get-go that nothing is going to happen until the 1,300-year-old schism between Shia, which is predominantly in Iran, and Sunni, which you could say Saudi Arabia, but also Egypt and United Arab Emirates, and most of the Muslim population on the globe is Sunni. So the Iranians are in the minority, and this whole schism is 1,300 years, and they hate each other. I mean, the war between Iran and Iraq, which lasted, I think, 8 years, was basically Shia against Sunni. And it's the same thing. You've got an unprecedented alliance, which we've never seen before, between Saudi Arabia, Israel, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates. And that's unprecedented. But until this schism is fixed or decided, somebody's got to come up on top. Because the Iranians, the whole idea of Syria and then Yemen, it's like a pincer move. They're surrounding Saudi Arabia. That's the idea. That's the whole why Yemen is attacking the Saudis. They want Mecca and Medina. So we've got a war. It appears like Iran is out there to kill everybody, and in some ways, I guess they are. But it's really against Sunni and Shia. Speak to that first, and then I've got a lead-up question for you.
Well, you're absolutely right. A lot of people think that the Muslims have been killing the Jews, and that's a big issue, and it is a big issue, and we'll talk about that. But Muslims have killed Shiites and Sunnis, killed more of them by far than this Jew-Arab Muslim scenario. And like you said, Iran is Persian, not Arab. So I want to clarify that. But you're right, that's absolutely the situation. Now, they don't have a pope in Islam, right? That's galvanizing all the aspects of, like the Pope with Catholicism. So the Ottoman Empire had a caliphate, but that's gone as of World War I.
Yep.
Iran wants a Shiite caliphate, and they want the Mahdi to be charged with it. The Sunnis want to have their caliphate. So they all want to have that caliphate in place right now, but they don't have a galvanizing leader per se. So they're fighting and fighting. The problem is, and all these countries we're talking about in the Fertile Crescent, they are all in biblical prophecies. So we have to ultimately take this show into the prophetic perspective of what's going on. But at some point in time, as much as they hate each other, their hatred of Israel is going to trump their hatred of each other. Because Shiites and Sunnis still have the same 5 pillars of faith. They still bow to Mecca, they still make the pilgrimages, etc. But they don't like each other because of the concerns about who should be the actual leader, should it be a true descendant of Muhammad or whatever. They hate Israel.
So, but that has to be decided, in my opinion, before we jump to the next phase, and that's what I think we're seeing, is that someone is going to wind up ruling or being really dominant in Islam. Maybe Iran goes away. You've written about that. Before we talk about the idea of Iran basically dissolving into nothing, the Iranians and the Shia believe in the manifestation of the Mahdi. And that's what you got to remember, folks, that the mullahs who run the country in Iran their eschatology, their end-time belief system is radical, really radical. And they believe that the Mahdi, if we actually start reading it, the Mahdi takes Jesus and shows him how to pray in Jerusalem, which is a real slap on the face to Christians. I think it's the other way around, and then some. But their whole deal is, in order for the Mahdi to manifest, there's got to be complete chaos in the world. So we have to ask ourselves, the mullahs run Iran completely. Everything is being pushed forward. Their agenda is being pushed forward by this radical eschatological position, viewpoint, paradigm. Mm-hmm. Speak to that.
Well, it plays into all the other concerns of the desperation they have. They've got the proxies they've got to fund. They've got the protests going on because the economy's in the tank because of the sanctions. And yet the big card behind it all is this eschatology that you're talking about. So, and I believe it was Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran before Rouhani, who actually believed that he was called into this time frame to create that kind of chaos.
And he hasn't left yet. I mean, he's still there. He's in the wings.
Right. So, that mindset is still there, and I do believe that he was not the only one of the leaders who believed they were called to this generation for that purpose. Will the Mahdi come? Will that be the end? Where will that take Islam? Frankly, I don't see that coming.
No, I don't either.
I see prophecies happening that are going to restrict any ability for Iran to even take that to the next level. Dealing with Elam and Jeremiah 49, dealing with Ezekiel 38.
And you've written about all this.
I have.
You've studied it and written about it and talked about it at conferences.
Absolutely. So turning it to the biblical narrative, which will come and supersede all these sort of things, which will trump it all, if you will, right, is a lot of people right now are saying, well, Iran is in Bible prophecy. Yes, it is, and they're jumping to Ezekiel 38, verse 5, where Persia is listed, with Russia, Turkey, a coalition of 9 populations.
I don't think we're there yet.
But that Israel has to be dwelling securely in the midst of the land without walls, bars, nor gates, extremely prosperous Israel that Russia comes after because with its coalition for plunder and booty, great plunder and booty. And I don't see that Israel in place right now, and I think that prophecy is looming and coming real soon. But there's another prophecy dealing with Iran. Jeremiah wrote about Iran around 596 BC. He was a contemporary with Ezekiel, but Ezekiel wrote about 20 years later, 10 to 20 years later, Ezekiel 38. Both prophecies talk about Iran in the latter days, so they're latter days prophecies. But Jeremiah's prophecy is distinctly different. It's not a different camera angle with more details
Right.
of Ezekiel 38. Right. The events happen inside of Iran. There's other multiple reasons why it's distinct, whereas Ezekiel 38 is taking place in Israel. So location in itself shows it's a distinction between the prophecies. So what I tell people is what's on my radar in Iran, and I think it's going to probably be the next prophecy to find fulfillment, is going to be the Jeremiah 49 verses 34 through 39. And if I have a moment, I will just summarize it. It's only 6 verses.
Please do. We're here.
The first 4 verses are bad news for Iran. The last 2 verses are actually pretty good news for the Iranians, per se.
The people.
Yeah. But what we have is a prophecy that sounds nuclear in its proportions. And it says that the Lord is at some point going to become very fiercely angry with the leadership of Iran. And I believe that time has come. They want to wipe Israel off the map. The theme of Ezekiel 38, shifting back to that for a minute, is when God stops that supernaturally, this massive invasion with Russia and their cohorts, he does it with earthquake, fire, hailstone, and brimstone. It's a supernatural destruction. It'll be clear it's a supernatural destruction. And he says when that's done, I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. They shall not profane it anymore. I'm the Holy One in Israel. But Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map, which would put a real damper on God's ability to make his holy name known through Israel in Ezekiel 38. So it's this tug of war, we know who's going to win it, and it's not going to be Iran. So now I'm looking at this. The Lord is fiercely angry with the leaders of Iran. How do we know that's what angers him? It says, because he will destroy from there the kings and the princes, and you do not destroy good leadership. Jeremiah wrote this before King Cyrus was on the scene. King Cyrus was actually a good king and would not be destroyed. He was talked about and predicted in Isaiah 44 and 45, century over before he was even born. So we know it's bad kings that he's going to destroy. But why does he want to destroy them, and why are they bad? Well, the clue is in he's going to they want to launch something lethal somewhere. And we know that because he says, I'm going to prevent that. I'm going to break the bow, probably the intercontinental ballistic missiles' ability to launch, at the foremost of its might, which would probably be its nuclear grasp, its nuclear program.
And they're close to that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Trump comes out as we speak today.
First thing he said.
We're going to timestamp this. I will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon.
That's how he opened up the conference.
That's right.
I mean, not thank you for coming here. It's like, bam. It's like his first statement. There it is. Incredible.
Yeah. He said, and I'm going to get back into the prophecy, but let's just talk about that for a minute. He also said that the attacks that came in retaliation to taking out Soleimani seems to be indicative that Iran wants to stand down.
Right.
And I want to visit that in a minute. But then he went on to say we've spent $2.4 trillion on our military, and we got big bombs that are lethal.
They know it. I mean, I think
he's throwing out the gauntlet right there.
The Iranians know that they're going to last about 10 minutes if they really push them.
Right.
Maybe 10 minutes.
Right. So, okay, are they going to, as we sit here right now, we don't know if Iran's going to stand down. We don't know if Trump's going to stand down.
I would say yes. Trump's amazing. He's not W or, Bolton or any of these guys, gung ho, let's get, it's like a chess game. It really is. It's like you raided our embassy, we're going to take out Soleimani.
Right. But there's 4 dynamics we have to think about when it comes to what's going to happen here as a result of this escalation that has been happening in the Middle East. And it's more than just taking out Soleimani. You had the drone shot down. You had the Saudi oil field attack. You had
the Ukrainian airplane today, some people were saying that, it might have been a rocket.
Died over Iran, all those people, unfortunately. Right. You had vessels being captured. Right. You got the threat of the Strait of Hormuz being shut down at some point.
I want to get into because that's been my bailiwick for 10 years. You know that.
Yeah, that's right. And so what are the 4 dynamics? 1 is, is Iran trying to stand down? 2 is Trump going to stand down if they stand down? 3 is Satan going to stand down? 4 is God going to stand down? At some point, God's going to be fiercely angry and express that and manifest this. It'll supersede his long-suffering for these prophecies. He's long-suffering now. You and I both know, we'll talk about this, that he is doing supernatural evangelism in Iran through dreams, miracles, healings, and visions. So God is very busy with his long-suffering and his mercy.
And we covered that in Watchers 9, Days of Chaos, where we interviewed a gentleman who was a lead pastor over there. And what he told us was incredible. And if you haven't seen that film, check out Best of Watchers, lamarzulli.net. Shameless plug, folks, but... if you haven't seen it, it's really powerful.
I was there when you
I know you were. It was incredible.
Interviewed him, an unbelievable story. You definitely got to watch that. Yeah. But so, at this point, I'm going to hedge my bets that we're getting pretty close to God showing his fury. He says, my fierce anger will create a disaster. He's going to break the bow at the foremost of their mights. And it says that he's going to bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven, which is an idiom for a worldwide dispersion. He's going to bring them, and it says, I will send the exiles out into the nations of the world as a result of the breaking of the bow at the foremost of the might. It says there'll be no nations where the exiles, the indigenous population, don't go. Now, let's put a face on the map for a minute for the people.
All right.
What we're talking about is Elam versus Persia. Two distinctly different places. Elam hugs the Persian Gulf. It's the westernmost side.
And there's the Persian Gulf right behind us, so you guys can see it. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's the westernmost side of Iran. And Persia, it's about a fourth of Iran. And Persia would be the other 3/4 of Iran, much larger in scope, but still distinctly territorially throughout time, separated geographically by these Zagros Mountains. So it has always been the two different places now. So basically what he's saying is that that's where the Bashar nuclear reactor is right now.
Right.
Now that is loaded with nuclear Russian fuel rods. It is a nuclear disaster waiting to happen. It sits on a highly seismic location.
Right. And there were earthquakes in the last 48 hours.
That's right. And maybe this prophecy will have an earthquake involved, but it seems like it's actually more military, as I'll explain. But Russia's over there now. One of the members of the JC, the P5+1, in bed with Iran, building Bashar 2 and Bashar 3. China and Russia just recently had war drills with Iran before Soleimani was taken out, before the embassy was attacked. Major war drills. China wants Iran's oil, and Russia, and these were members of the P5+1, the JCPOA, who Trump said today, I want you guys all to realize how you need to get away from that JCPOA, including Russia and China. And if I take a bet right here, they're not going to get away from Iran because they have relationships with Iran. So we got that big geopolitical dynamic going on.
Very complex.
But so it says here that these exiles are going to be scattered into the nations of the world. I will bring a disaster upon them, and the disaster is going to be so awesome in this area, regionally specific by the Persian Gulf. Probably nuclear, which will affect the Arab states across the Gulf, by the way. We'll talk about that too. It won't just be confined itself right there. And it's going to be of the magnitude that it says Iran will be dismayed before its enemies. They're going to go, oh my God, look what meaning they have enemies at the time it happens. A menu of enemies, which they have today. Israel, Saudi Arabia, you talk about that alliance. Well, that alliance is because the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
And they know if Iran gets the bomb, it's all over.
That's right.
They know.
So they
will use it.
That's right. And so they have enemies at the time. So the bad news is for Iranians right now, and you and I, we reach into these Iranians. We have relationships with some of these Iranians, especially the Iranian Christians. I go on TV into Iran through satellite TV with Hormuz Sharia, and they translate in Farsi talking about these prophecies. And
that's incredible.
They're very concerned about this prophecy. The bad news is that this is going to happen, and it's going to probably be a nuclear disaster. And a lot of those are very impoverished Iranians there, and they have no exit strategy. They're going to be hurt. The good news is, and this is what some of the Iranians are very excited about, Jeremiah 49, verse 38 and 39 says, I will set my throne in Elam. That's interesting, right? The same word used for I will set my throne in Jerusalem in Jeremiah 3. And the heaven is God's throne is in heaven, and earth is his footstool. Same word in Isaiah 66, I believe it is. And that's got them excited. God's going to someday set his throne there. In the Nuclear Showdown book, Revealing the Ancient Prophecy of Elam, that I've written about, I explain that prophecy, and they can read about it in the book, and then it's got a DVD as well. But the other thing it says in the very last verse, I will bring back the captives of Elam, I will restore their fortunes in some translations, which means this. It means they get dispersed, they go out into the nations of the world, and they go through the tribulation period. They do because they come back at the end of the tribulation back into the land restored for the Messianic kingdom. The theme of restoring a remnant is predominant with the Jordanians, with the Egyptians, with the Assyrians, especially with Israel. They've got a remnant. And then Iran as well.
Let me ask you this. If this, if you're right and the Jeremiah scenario happens and, Iran is basically smacked down, then how are they able to remilitarize for Ezekiel 38?
Right, so it doesn't take out all of Iran. It is geographically,
the western part we were talking about,
specific.
where the Bashir reactor is.
Right.
Okay.
So what transpires is that Iran still musters up its ability to be involved in the Ezekiel 38 coalition. Now, it's interesting, and I don't want to make a big deal out of this, because usually when people start teaching on Ezekiel 38, it's watch out for Russia, Turkey, and Iran, like the big three players. Mm-hmm. But if you look at and you read Ezekiel 38, it does talk about Russia and Turkey in the first couple positions, and then Iran gets an honorable mention down around verse 5 behind Ethiopia and Libya.
Exactly. Which is
Why
really
is that?
strange.
Is that because
really
the
strange.
Iran in Ezekiel 38 is not the same military power that it is presently today?
Interesting.
Does something happen? Now, I'm not making a big deal out of that, but it could be a clue that we need to look at. Because if what I'm saying is correct, what's going to probably transpire is Iran's going to take a hit. They're going to call upon their proxies to retaliate. They're not going to stand down at some point. Maybe they will temporarily here. They're going to call on Hezbollah to start lobbing missiles at the rate of about 1,500 a day.
And there's no way. We sat down with Dan Gordon again. If you want to, this is all in Days of Chaos when we sat down with Dan Gordon, who's dual citizenship, U.S. and Israeli, and he's called up. He's a colonel, I think, and or maybe a captain, whatever. But he's in the reserves of IDF, and he sits down there, looks right at the camera and just says, Iron Dome can stop some, but they can't stop them all. If Hezbollah starts launching 1,000 missiles, it's going to be chaos, utter chaos in Israel. And they will retaliate. And that's the only thing that's stopping them. If Israel didn't have an Air Force and the IDF, it'd be all over. They would have done it yesterday. But they know the moment, we can launch the rockets, but they have no Air Force. Mm-hmm. And without an Air Force, you don't rule.
Right, and we're not talking about Saddam Hussein lobbing a few indiscriminate Scud-Ds.
Right, these are a whole different deal.
We're talking about a calculated attack on the little Satan, who they think it is. Yeah. They still want to wipe Israel off the map. That is their plan. And Hezbollah coming at them from the north. Dear viewer, in 2006, in the summer, there was a 34-day campaign where Hezbollah lobbed 4,000 missiles into Israel.
We talked about
the missiles they have now are much more advanced. Many of them are precision-guided. They can reach a bank of targets throughout all of Israel. Syria will come inside of this thing as well. Assad, if he brings in chemical weapons, that's a possibility. You got Hamas. Hamas is there. You got, who knows if the Houthis are going to start making a move up and toward
anything is possible.
Iraq, the Shiites in Iraq.
Yeah.
We're talking about a war that puts Israel against the ropes for a matter of survival. It becomes a prison rule fight. And what happens? They take out Damascus. They destroy the city of Damascus in fulfillment of Isaiah.
And they've already said that. I mean, Netanyahu, not himself, but one of his people in the cabinet, whatever, years ago said, if you attack us with chemical weapons, we will destroy you.
That's right.
I mean, they've already told him, you do this, forget Damascus. Yeah. Let me ask you something, and it's just, there's two things in my book, Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural, shameless plug, which I'm hopefully going to do a second edition because it's 10 years old and it's out of print, and we're going to reprint it, but I want to bring it up to speed. But there's a saying, and the Lord gave me this, I'm not that smart. The Lord gave me this saying, the present political landscape is in direct correlation to supernatural events that happened in some cases millennia ago. That's a mouthful. But you never hear about what's really happening here, is that Israel and the land of Israel is based on a set of supernatural events that happened 4,000 years ago with Moses receiving the Torah and the whole Exodus and everything else. Conversely, on the other side of the spectrum, the Muslims and Iran is based on supernatural events that happened to Muhammad. This is what is coloring the body politic of both countries. And then you've got us, Christian America, despite what Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Hussein Obama, stated that we're no longer a Christian nation. We beg to differ. Those of us who are Christians, and there are many of us, not the Hollywood elites, but there are millions of us, 63 million of us at least, if not more, that voted for the Donald. And that Christian experience has colored the body politic in the United States. Well, it's all based on supernatural experiences, and no one ever talks about this. I mean, this is what's driving the Mullahs. We touched on it with their belief in the Mahdi, but where does that belief come from? It comes from Muhammad and his so-called revelation. And the Israelis, why are they there? Because of Moses and the Promised Land and the Exodus. Mm-hmm. So we are looking at, and it amazes me how it's blatant, it's obvious to us, but it's like glaring. All this is because of different supernatural dynamics in different countries, which have colored the body politic. Speak to that, please. Your thoughts.
Well, it is, and really it's the ultimate battle between good and evil, God and Satan, right? In other words, God has made an unconditional covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they would make them a great nation. A great nation needs a people. They have what's called the chosen people. Genesis 15, you can read about this. A people needs to have a land. They have land, the promised land, Genesis 15:18, which is much more expansive than Israel today. Someday they will be between the river of Egypt and Nile and the river Euphrates. And then you would need a king to reign over them, the eternal king, the Messiah. That's in 2 Samuel 7.
And this is all future, but it's going to happen.
2 Samuel 7. And then, of course, they need an eternal law of love to govern them. And the new law in Jeremiah, the new covenant in Jeremiah. So, see, these are all part of God's plan of the Abrahamic covenant, which is an unconditional covenant. Satan has always been attacking that. Kill the Jews. Take the land. You know, he tried to kill their king Messiah. Of course, he resurrected from the dead and defeated death and took away the sting. So you're right, it's supernatural in its origins. And even really what we got right now, the ancient hatred of the Arabs of the Jews, goes back to the time of Ishmael and Isaac. The brothers had their feud. Ishmael felt he was cheated out of the covenants of the content of the Abrahamic covenant. You had Hagar and Sarah, even prior to that, the mothers. Then you had Esau and Jacob. And this hatred, ancient Arab hatred, the Bible talks about it in two places, Ezekiel 25 and Ezekiel 35. It created in the Middle East. And as time went by and the Jews were out in the diaspora for 1878 years, what happened was Satan comes along around 7th century, and blankets that whole hatred of those peoples, unifies them under one God, because they had like 360 different gods they worshipped back there. They bring them under Allah, the moon god, and blankets into a religion that hates the Jews and the Christians.
See what a coincidence.
So that when the Jews come back in the land,
right,
look what's waiting them. The ancient hatred's alive and well in a religious umbrella.
And that brings me to my next question. We hear these names by the media, and all media, between Fox and CNN. They'll talk about the Al-Quds Brigade that the Iranians have. But they never tell you what that really means. Explain what the Al-Quds Brigade is.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not an expert on that, but okay. I think it has a lot to do with his ability. Soleimani was in charge of that at that point, with their Shiite involvement in Iraq, their hegemony with their proxies, and that sort of thing. So I think one of their main functions in the Al-Quds was that hegemony spreading out throughout the Middle East through the proxies and that sort of thing. But I apologize for not having a true definition on what. Let
me just weigh in, and I don't mean to do that, but real quick, Quds is Jerusalem, right? And so the Al-Quds Brigade is named the Jerusalem Brigade. That's
to move to take over Jerusalem.
That's what they want.
That's right. Yeah.
They that's the end game here.
Right.
And so when you look at this, they get their name from the city of Jerusalem. I mean, there's the Israeli flag. That's what goes on in Iran constantly. So kill the Jews. Death to America, death to the Jews. I mean, this is, but, just think if Hillary Clinton, God forbid, had ever gotten into office and they attacked the embassy in Iraq, what the outcome would have been completely different. But Trump acted decisively and swiftly. There was no nonsense, so we didn't have another Benghazi. But before we take the break here, I want to talk about their one military option. And I blogged about this and talked about it for the last 10 years. When we were kind of coming up and starting conferences and books and everything else, we were talking about this. And we see the Strait of Hormuz, this very narrow waterway. You can see it right there. And this, apparently, I've never been there. I don't want to be there. It's just never going to happen, God forbid. But allegedly, the Iranian side is bristling with missiles and all sorts of fortifications. This is a narrow waterway where upwards of 40% of the world's oil, depending on who you talk to, let's be conservative, 30% of the world's oil comes from the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians have one major offensive to really create chaos globally, and that's to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And I posited the way to do that would be through a dirty bomb. Your thoughts?
Well, they have threatened to shut down the Strait of Hormuz on numerous occasions. And even recently, and like you pointed out, it's only 21 nautical miles. It's not.
It's really small.
It's easy to choke off.
Very easy.
And Iran's threat is sincere. I believe they could choke it off, and I believe they will try to as things start to escalate. what's interesting in Trump's comments today is that we are energy independent.
First time in how many years? Decades.
Yeah.
Decades since Bush Sr.
That's right. He said we're no longer dependent on Middle East oil. Now, see, that's a very important thing he said, because this is a threat I'm sure he's aware of. What the warning is to, and in the same sort of general time frames, he started saying to the JCPOA, the other countries, Germany, France, Britain, Russia, and China, he says, you guys need to get away from that deal as well. The deal was going to expire pretty soon anyways. We've just moved the time clock up, because they're the ones going to be affected by the Strait of Hormuz. They are still heavily dependent on it, especially China.
Yeah.
So they are affected by that stuff. And so world economies will get hit hard, and Iran knows that. We won't necessarily get hit that hard, because, certainly we'll pay a price for it, but not on the level that we would have before we became the number one oil producing nation in the world.
And what's amazing, this could have happened under both Bushes, under Clinton, under Obama, and it didn't. It's like they were all in bed with the Saudis. I mean, this whole thing is, who knows what's really going on here behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. I just find it incredibly alarming that it's always been there. It just didn't magically appear under the Trump presidency, but we've been under the shackles of the threat of oil prices rising, and OPEC is going to raise the price, and now we're in energy. This could have happened like decades ago. So we see the politics in Washington, call it the deep state, the shadow government, isn't necessarily for the American people.
Right, and really, if you want to talk about the potential strategies of Iran, let me say that again, potential strategies of Iran. Right now, their focus could be economically on the Strait of Hormuz, 2, spiritually taking out Israel and galvanizing the Arab and Muslim world around that kind of a move, because they still don't like the Jews over there, and or terrorism, and even in America. See, that's the other thing that we don't want to take for granted. Hezbollah has spawned a terrorist network that goes all the way through South America, through Central America, on into America as well, North America here. So, we don't know exactly how they're going to come with all these different approaches, but I would suggest to you it's probably not going to be, let's take Saudi Arabia out. They would probably, that now becomes lower on their totem pole. It was a soft target for them now. Take out the Saudi Arab field, show them we mean business, show them we can. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to the fact where they're being hit hard, they're going to try Israel, the Strait of Hormuz, maybe terrorism to try to shut us down on levels like that. So,
speaking of terrorism here, and we've talked about this, and I wrote about it again in Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and that's why I'm kind of bringing that book out again, because I think it's a very timely book where we are. But we know in the 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, all these suitcase nukes from the former Soviet Union got on the black market. That's a matter of, it all happened. There's no doubt about that. Now, the suitcase nuke, they don't have a detonation codes. The uranium in there is not new enough or volatile enough to produce the mushroom cloud, but it makes a great dirty nuke. And so you buy the suitcase nuke, you put some C4 in that thing, you blow it up in the stock exchange or Los Angeles or wherever, and you basically have Chernobyl. And the southern border was porous, still is. Thank you very much. It's a war zone. And many people believe that dirty nukes came across the border in the 90s, specifically under the direction perhaps of bin Laden. That's conjecture. We're not sure. But the Iranians could have been involved in it too. We're the Great Satan. And they were already working stuff. And the drones over Colorado, this is complete speculation on my part, complete speculation. But the drones over Colorado recently, I think they may be looking for something. I think they may have devices which will be able to pick up radiation, because these dirty nukes or the suitcase nukes would still give off a signal. They would. Maybe that's what we're looking at. That's conjecture, but I think that they have stuff like that embedded in America. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a threat that we have to consider as a possibility. When the Soviet Union collapsed, those Russian nuclear scientists were desperate. They started to sell secrets and things to Iran. That's a known fact.
Unbelievable.
These suitcase nukes could have come into the wrong hands. I actually, in my novel called Apocalypse Revelation, create a scenario where these nukes actually blow up stadiums and things like that, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know the shelf life on these things, right, and we don't know all this sort of stuff, but you know what? That is a possibility, and that would change the dynamics in America incredibly. It's
Very
more than
quickly.
a couple towers coming down.
Yeah, very, very quickly. Martial law.
Yeah, so maybe this will come and affect us, and I think that's what we try to let American Christians know. There's persecution going on in the world right now, in Iran and in other places as well.
We'll get into that in a second.
We're not necessarily sitting here thinking we are insulated from that over here in America as well. Mm-hmm. We're not going to go in the tribulation. We're pre-trib rapture believers,
right.
etc. But depending when that happens and how things start to blow up,
we're already seeing too much stuff.
We could start to live a different lifestyle entirely here
absolutely.
in this country. So,
well, we're at the actually past the bottom of the hour, and I'm going to go. Before I do that, folks, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I will tell you this: that the fires in Australia, I'm sure you've been following it, and when you look at the map of Australia and superimpose it on the United States, Australia basically takes up a little bit more than the United States, and the country is on fire. In fact, the fires are so debilitating that they're creating their own weather patterns. Please keep Australia in your prayers. I read these emails this week, but the bottom line is people are dying in their cars. They're evacuating. Roads are closed. Roads are melting. Trees are melting into the road. There are thunderstorms being created because of the fires. It's a dire situation. So please keep that in your prayer. Jingles, www.buyjingles.com. Folks, this stuff really works. And if you haven't checked this out yet, if you haven't bought Jingles, I would highly recommend you do that. Because if you've got stains, look, I'll tell you, we took Bob and Chrissy out last night, right? A special dinner with them. Bob and Chrissy Ulrich. And of course I'm eating with some wonderful lamb. It was really good. And I'm eating this stuff, and of course I have a really nice shirt on. Splat. My wife took the Jingles. First thing when we got home, sprayed the Jingles on the shirt, voila. And this stuff really works. That's my own testimony, folks. So if you've got stains on your carpet, it works like Mr. Wrinkles. There's skunks here. Now, we smell them every now and then. So far, Mr. Wrinkles has not gotten near a skunk or gotten sprayed. But I do know this. If it ever happens, I'm going to Jingles, because Jingles will take out that smell. Stains, skunk smell, blood on the carpet, you tell me, it'll all happen. If you've got a Jingles testimony, shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net, la@lamarzulli.net. We'll read it right here. Remember, folks, www.buyjingles.com, buyjingles.com. This stuff really works. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Keep it right here.
Hey, Dr. Phil here. I help people solve difficult and trying personal problems every day on my TV show, but there's one problem that's just got me stumped: childhood hunger. Nearly 16 million children in America struggle with it. That's 1 in 5 kids who may not know where their next meal is coming from, despite the fact that there's more than enough healthy, nutritious food out there to feed them all. Now, I don't know about you, but that is unacceptable to me. Luckily, the Feeding America network of good people is out there collecting surplus food and giving hope to hungry children and their families at local food banks all across the country. But let's face it, they can't do it without your help. Join me in supporting Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Hi, Matt Ray with America's First News here, and I have great news for those of you who suffer with debilitating migraine headaches, maybe a loved one or your child does. MigraLief, the nutritional migraine supplement everyone's talking about, now can be found at the Vitamin Shop stores nationwide and Meijer in the Midwest. For almost 2 decades, hundreds of thousands of migraine sufferers have benefited from MigraLeaf, and thousands of neurologists and headache specialists recommend it. Why is it popular? It's drug-free and addresses the specific nutritional needs of adults and children who suffer migraines. What's even better, MigraLeaf comes in a formula you can take daily and one on the spot as needed. So if you get migraines, get your life back on track. Go to MIG911.com. That's MIG and the numbers 911.com. That's also where you can read the testimonials. Or head on over to your local Vitamin Shop store nationwide or Meijer in the Midwest. If you get migraines, do yourself a favor. Change your life with MigraLeaf.
Hi, this is AJ, and I would love to invite you to tune into my show, Soul Wanderings, every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, where we visit with a new guest each week about their authentic journey through this human experience. So come wander with us Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, with Soul Wanderings, exclusively on KGRARadio.com.
Find the podcast on iTunes, iHeart, and Spotify. KGRARadio.com.
Hey folks, thanks so much for keeping it right here on Acceleration Radio. My special guest in studio, Bill Salas, author, lecturer, adventurer, and great musician also that he doesn't talk about. But Bill, I've got a slide up here for the folks to see. The Syrian War, 500,000 dead. It's gone on for years. I've read accounts of unbelievable torture, stuff that you can't even believe. Of course, what's happening, if I digress here, a little rabbit trail, what's happening on our southern border with the cartels and the torture there, it's so horrific. It's utterly satanic. But that's what's happening in Syria. So, look, my heart goes out. Look, people are people. We maybe have different religious beliefs. They may want to kill us, but still, they're people. And I don't think everybody wants to kill us over there. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of these people are good people, and their lives are a complete utter train wreck. 500,000 dead in Syria since this ridiculous civil war, the Arab Spring, landed in Syria to try to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. And Assad is still in power, being propped up by the Russians and the Iranians. And what we see is that everything goes down into Lebanon. So we see this. Again, the Shia crescent goes from Iran through Iraq into Syria and then down to Lebanon in the north. And then the southern pincer is Yemen, is their proxy army. So
and Hamas in the Gaza.
Yeah. So this is, basically Israel is surrounded, and the Saudis are surrounded too, and they know that. Mm-hmm. That's why they're all coalescing. Mm-hmm. So speak of the fact that, what's going on in Syria and how it pertains specifically to biblical prophecy, because it's there, mm-hmm. and it plays a prominent role. Speak to that, please.
Right, and remember that Assad is beholding to Iran. I mean, he's not an independent leader there. He is an agent, even more than a proxy, of Iran. So whatever Iran starts to say and want to do, they're going to call on Nasrallah of Hezbollah, Assad of Syria, etc. And ultimately, what we find out is Syria is involved in biblical prophecies of the end time. So I'm going to kind of just go off into that direction.
Please do.
Because I'm going to add a little something to the general teaching about Isaiah 17, which deals with the destruction of Damascus, the capital city of Syria. But I'm going to talk about how Israel probably gets affected very adversely in that body of the prophecies. So Isaiah 17 talks about Syria, and in verse 1 it says, Damascus will cease from being a city.
Amazing.
It will be a ruinous heap. It will literally in Hebrew reduced to rubble, and it will cease to exist, anymore.
Stop right there just for a second. Folks, that's never happened. There are people that will say that Damascus was destroyed. Damascus has never been destroyed, not like what the Bible is talking about. So this prophecy is future. And Bill's written about this in the prophecies which are yet to come. Please continue.
That's right. Olus continues, the inhabited city in recorded history, goes back to the time of Abraham. It is the capital of Syria. Some people say it was fulfilled by the Assyrian Empire way back when, but I tell people, listen, Isaiah in his 66 books mentions Assyria 37 times and doesn't mention them once in Isaiah 17. But what he does mention in Isaiah 17 verse 9 is there's other strong cities that are hit. There is desolation, and it is caused by the children of Israel. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, exist in fulfillment of numerous Bible prophecies, and one of them is to be involved in the destruction of Damascus. It says in verse 14, as the prophecy concludes, at one evening you see him, speaking of Damascus in the masculine pronoun, but in the morning he is no more. He's gone. We see Damascus, like tonight Damascus exists, but we could wake up tomorrow morning in this scenario and it's gone. And it says, this is the portion of those who rob us and plunder us. In other words, it's Israel responding because they've been in self-defense. They've had to defend themselves, right? So that's a big clue right there. And how hard have they been hit? That's what I want to allude to. Why are they taking out a city? And by the way, they have the technologies to take out a city. And Damascus is not that far from Tel Aviv.
No, it's not.
As the crow flies.
Right.
So if you drop a nuclear weapon, which it sounds like a nuclear disaster that happens overnight, you've got to be careful about the burst altitude.
It would be a tactical nuke, and I know that the Israeli, I believe that the Israelis have those.
That's right. So it sounds nuclear. It sounds like it could happen in the very near future. And that prophecy is one of the other ones we're looking at on our radar quite closely. But then again, the other issue with that, though, is that I think in Isaiah 17, verses 4 through 6, people need to study that. Because it talks about what happens is when this prophecy is taking fulfillment. It says, the glory of Jacob will wane, his flesh will wax lean. Now, Jacob is Israel. That's another name for Jacob is Israel. Sure. His flesh will wax lean. There will be a harvest like in the valley of Ephraim, which I won't get into what that all means, but it says it uses the example of it'll be like an olive tree. There's this imagery now that Isaiah puts forward of an olive tree. Now, an olive tree can grow several stories high. It can have hundreds of thousands of olives on it. It's a tree that's very popular in Israel, so it's a great imagery. It'll be like an imagery of an olive tree. At the uppermost branch, there's a shaking with only two or three olives remaining on it. So it's looking to me, L.A., that what we're being told here is that when this stuff starts to happen, when Israel's being robbed and plundered, and that's why they destroyed the city of Damascus, they are hit. They are hit hard. They're probably hit from all the proxies of Iran coming at them, chemical weapons coming in, bombs coming into Tel Aviv that the Iron Dome can intercept, into Haifa, and that sort of thing. And as a result, they have to destroy a city. They have to act out. And when that happens, I believe that will lead to either other prophecies.
Ezekiel 38.
No, before Ezekiel 38.
Okay.
Well, ultimately that will happen subsequent.
So where do you place the destruction of Damascus then?
Okay, here's how I lay these out. I see the disaster in Elam. We talked about it at the beginning of the program in Iran, leading towards retaliation by Iran, leading toward Damascus and Hezbollah and everybody coming against Israel, leading to the destruction of Damascus, leading to Israel get hit hard like an olive tree in the uppermost branch, northern Israel, to the point where the other Arab countries, leaning now towards Psalm 83, there are Arab countries around, they say, look, we don't want Beirut to be next. We don't want Mecca to be next, destroyed by Israel. We do not want Cairo to be next, etc., Baghdad, etc. And Israel's hurt right now. They're hurt. We can take them out now at this point in time. And we find out that's what happens. And we find out there's another city that Israel does take out. It's in Jeremiah 49, verses 2, in Ammon, Jordan. It says there's an alarm of war in Rabbah of the Ammonites, which is Ammon, Jordan, and it shall be a desolate mound, and Israel will take possession of its inheritance. So what happens is that Israel then takes out Ammon, Jordan, as this other onslaught comes at them. So I'm looking at that prophecy as well. Remember Jesus said in Matthew 24, when you see abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, flee to the mountains, and he's referring to the remnant to flee to Petra and southern Jordan. Why would he tell them to go there if they did not have possession of southern Jordan? They will start to annex Jordan. Jordan right now is a mistake on a modern-day map made by man. It is going to be taken over by Israel.
World War I, right.
As Zephaniah 2 talks about Israel taking over Jordan. Obadiah 1, verse 19 talks about southern Jordan being taken over, etc. So Israel is going to take over Jordan as a result, and they do that when they win wars. Joshua did it 3,300 years ago. King David did it 3,000 years ago. Israel did it in 1967. When they win wars, they take over land, and that is land inside of the Promised Land.
Wow. Yeah, Ammon was part of the original Promised Land.
That's
correct?
right.
Okay,
That's right.
So they're just getting what they were promised years ago. So tell us about, because we're coming down to the close here of the program, and thanks, folks, for watching this. Really appreciate it. But tell us this new DVD that you've got out.
Right. It's called The Last Prophecies, the prophecies within the first 3.5 years of the tribulation.
Okay.
It is the teaching DVD, PowerPoint presentation with 2 messages on it. The Who is the Mysterious Woman of Revelation 17 is the other bonus message. Single disc, 2 messages.
Great.
And you featured the Last Prophecies book.
Right.
So you've already featured that here, so that this is a complimentary enhancement to that, a teaching aid to that. And it's dealing with really important things. Matter of fact, you sat in on the presentation in San Antonio.
Yeah, it was really
and
good.
you gave it high marks.
Yeah, really good.
As did Bill Koenig and Gary Stearman.
You were on fire. You were really good.
I mean, some have said this is the most important teaching I've done so far. And I've been the Middle East guy. I've been, that's how I got that was my bailiwick. That's how I got a platform. But the Lord has led me to try to sequence the events between now and the second coming of Jesus Christ. We did the now prophecies, what could happen at the present time. The next prophecies, what could happen with a few preconditions after the nows. And then we're getting into the last prophecies. And there's so many going on in the tribulation, I had to cut it into 2 books because I'm trying to keep these at 270 to 300 page books. And we've covered the first half of the tribulation in the first book and this DVD. So I'm going to encourage your viewers to get their hands on this DVD.
And you can get it
good.
by going to our website, lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. And folks, when you order that, we're also giving a bonus DVD. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but we're going to give a bonus DVD just for ordering your DVD. So it's a great deal, and you're arming yourself. It's a threefold. You're arming yourself with vital information. You're blessing Bill to keep him on the trail of what he's doing, and you're blessing me at the same time. So it's everybody wins. Bill, it's I'll tell you, we are in absolutely unprecedented times. I've never seen it this charged, and now with Trump, there's a new sheriff in town. A lot's going on with the earthquakes in Iran, the downed Ukrainian plane, the missiles that were fired, yesterday, last night, and we're not out of the woods here yet. We're not. And things are only heating up. The good news is, in my opinion, we've got someone that stands up for Israel, unlike Hussein Obama. He stands up for Israel. And, a lot of people don't like our president. That's okay. You might think he's crass or bold or whatever, but or he's going to get us into World War III. Well, that's not what's happening. You can see that he's a master chess player, and he's moving very, very slowly. It's like, what was he supposed to do? Not do anything for hitting the embassy? I think what he did with Soleimani was long overdue. Long overdue.
Daniel 2:21 says this: "It's the Lord who changes times and seasons, removes and raises up kings, and gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those with understanding." Right now, all the kings, potentially for the end times, be them good apples or bad apples, they're in place, in my estimation. They're still trying to figure out who's next with Netanyahu and whatever in Israel, but you know what? That's all going to come to a turnaround real soon as well, as far as a conclusion. So we're there, in my estimation, L.A.
I agree. Bill, thanks so much for coming on the record. Folks, before I go, we're going to be in Ohio again, Nephilim Again Conference with Russ Dizdar, Chief Joseph Riverwind, Andrew Graffia, and, of course, L.A. Marzulli. All things Nephilim. It's the only conference like it. It starts March 27th to the 29th. We'll be going out to the Great Circle Mound. I've got all sorts of clips from films. I can't wait to get into this. And if you order now by going to NephilimAgain.com and register, you're going to get a bonus DVD from us. Okay, so check that out, NephilimAgain.com. Get your tickets, March 27th, 28th, and 29th. It's all the time I have for Bill. Thanks so much for coming in the studio.
All right, L.A.
We'll see you soon on the trail, on the conference trail. Folks, thanks for watching. Remember, I'll see you on the air or in the air.
You have been listening to Acceleration Radio Live, and any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or program content without express written permission from the KGRA-DB or L.A. Marzulli himself is strictly prohibited. The Acceleration Radio Show with L.A. Marzulli, in direct cooperation with the internet website kgraradio.com. To find more on L.A., visit his website at lamarzulli.net.